a man who has studied deeply and for a very long time the nature of the challenge that we're facing from international communism, not least that emanates from the Chinese Communist Party and its worldwide operations. His name is Trevor Loudon. He has our country to essentially help raise awareness about the danger that Marxists, communists, socialists, democratic socialists, and the like represent to America from his native New Zealand, and has done incalculably important work in laying out the case in a series of books and documentary films, including notably The Enemies Within. He's a frequent guest here at Secure Freedom Radio. We're very pleased to have him with us, not just for an audio, but also for a video of our conversation about the Biden presidency, what we should expect from it, but specifically what its relationship with the Chinese Communist Party is likely to mean for our own country and the world. Trevor Loudon, it is great to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today and for giving a full hour, indeed, of your time for that purpose.
Look, it's a pleasure, Frank. Thanks for having me on.
I want to start with sort of a point of calibration, I guess, Trevor. Let's discuss in this first block the nature of the Chinese Communist Party. What we have seen in its 70-odd years of operations, both inside China itself and increasingly elsewhere around the world. How would you characterize the Chinese Communist Party as a threat to our country and freedom-loving people across the planet?
Well, the Chinese Communist Party has grown increasingly aggressive over the last few years. I compare it to the old Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which always had the intention of world domination. It was always its raison d'etre. Well, the difference between the Soviet Party and the Chinese Communist Party is the Chinese Communist Party has lots more money, which is able to use all around the world to extend its influence. And we are, I think, going to see that going to overdrive now that President Trump is no longer in the White House.
And what would you say is the character of the regime? There are those who say, well, it calls itself a communist party, but it really isn't a communist party. There are certainly aspects of its economic model that are, I guess, more fascistic than, strictly speaking, communist. But when you hear that term applied to the party, to its membership, to its agenda, is it apt or a relic of the past?
Yeah, look, I think it is a genuine communist party, and people look at its economic policies, it's so-called, and it does more closely resemble a fascist system in its current form. But this just goes back to classic Marxism. Marx talked about the stages of development from primitive communism. Society would go from primitive communism to feudalism to a capitalist system. Then it would go to socialism, then to communism. And if you look at the Xi Zone talks and the writings of the Chinese Communist Party, they openly acknowledged they made a huge mistake with Mao. They tried to go from a feudalist society directly to a socialist society and missed out the capitalist stage. So that was a huge disaster. So as classic Marxists, they've gone back to the capitalist stage, and now under Xi, they are openly and aggressively talking about socialism again, and they now have the money that the capitalism produced to build up their military and move back onto the socialist aggressive stage, and that's where we are now. So too many commentators have the idea that if a communist country adopts some so-called free market or capitalist economic forms, that's somehow an abandonment of the communist goal. It's not. It's just classic Marxism, and Marxism is very, very flexible. It will do whatever it takes to expand its power. It'll take one step backwards to make two steps forward. So I don't think we should expect anything but a big push onward to communism under the current regime.
And why that is so important is that it not only speaks to what the Chinese intend to do inside the territory of China, including its captive nations, enslaved peoples, but what it has in mind for the rest of the world as well. And I guess maybe just a quick aside, fascism, of course, was Nazis' term for national socialism, or rather, it was their concept, their model for a socialist stage as well. And it's an important point because it demonstrates that they weren't really on the right, as we've often been told. They were just creatures of the left as well. The main thing that I want to make sure we touch on here in terms of level setting, Trevor, is something you've focused on intensively, namely what the Chinese Communist Party has been doing to put into place instruments by which they can extend their socialist, communist, fascist, whatever phase they may be in, model worldwide, including by taking down the United States of America. Quickly, just describe, if you would, the United Front Work Department of the Chinese Communist Party, what it is and what its mission is.
Well, the United Front Work Department is a major part of the Chinese Communist regime, and what it does, it's really targeted overseas. It is building up. It's using the Chinese diaspora. It's using its influence in foreign countries through things like the Belt and Road Initiative. Partly it's business, partly it's ideological. It is working with elements of foreign countries to massively extend Chinese influence in those countries. And of course, the United
Hold the
States.
thought, Trevor. We have to take just a quick break. We'll come right back and talk about how that United Front Work Department is operating not only for the Chinese Communist Party, but against us here in the United States as well. That and more with Trevor Loudon straight ahead.